Hello and welcome back to another episode of Ty the Tasmanian Tiger 2 on Nyxus Gaming. Except today we aren't playing the game, we are here for a lovely Nyxus guide. Today we're going to be talking about all the lovely boomerangs that you can find throughout the game. Starting with the regular old bog standard boomerang. This is your basic ancient Gumtree model. No bells and whistles, but it is light and fast, and mighty effective in the paws of the right Tasmanian Tiger. Yeah, not really much to say about this one. It is literally just the basic boomerang. It doesn't do anything special. It can't break these crates. It can break any other crates you see throughout the game. Unfortunately, I've chosen a terrible area and don't see any around that I can show that out with, but yeah, I mean, it gets the job done for any basic stuff you need it to do. It cannot take out Uber Frills or any other high-powered enemies, of course, but we'll get to the ranks that can do that when we move on to that section. A good 50% of them cannot do that. So let's move on to the next. This next one isn't really an official boomerang, but it is listed on the wiki nonetheless. Whenever you are driving the 4B, the helicopter, or even the sub-bunyip, you may see that Ty just is holding a regular boomerang. But when you throw it, it explodes. This is called the Blastorang, and again, it's really just a fit-in for any time you're in a vehicle and can't use your regular rangs, so again, nothing really special about it. Now, even though Ty has his trusty old boomerangs above ground, when you jump into water, you may notice them change a little bit. That is because they turn into the Aquarangs. They are found by wrecks in an old shipwreck. The Aquarangs can cut through water like a hot knife through butter, and they only work underwater. You actually get these in the first game, and it's the solution to Ty being able to swim much faster. He's more like a fish with fins coming out. And of course, if you come across any enemies in the water, you can now actually defend yourself with a weapon. Other than that, though, they are still just pretty basic boomerangs that you can just use underwater. Unfortunately, if you want to do anything fun with your boomerangs, you are going to have to buy them. There are two shops in the game, the first of which is going to be here in Boomerang Town, where you can buy rangs with various effects. And then the second one is going to be out on the road, Sly's shop, where once you've bought a rank here, you can go buy the upgraded version at Sly's shop. We're going to run through all the ones in this shop first. If vehicles, I probably shouldn't stand in the middle of the road, honestly. But we're going to run through all of these first, starting with the Camerang. Now, the Camerang, not only does it cause damage with its excessively bright flash, but it's great for taking selfies too. I do believe in combat it does work like a normal boomerang.
Hello, toy.
But you get the nice flash sound effect, and I don't know if it actually flashes against enemies. This boomerang is new to the game. It was not part of the official release. It's been in for a couple years as beta content, if you get into that, but was just a month or two ago officially released into a new version of the game. Now, again, in combat, it acts pretty normally, but it functions as a camera mode where you can change the view from selfie to Ty's view, back to selfie. So say we want to take a picture of Ty right here, we can take it and we can change the color all we want, desaturate it, saturate it, keep it normal, make it toony if we want, we can blur it, we can pixelate it, or posterize it, add all the bloom we want, or maybe a little vignette to it. Of course, we can roll the camera and even change Ty's pose in here if we want. Just a fun little camera that you can play around with and take pictures of for your friends. It's worth noting that this rank does only cost 1,000 opals in the shop. It is the cheapest one in that shop in particular, and this is what it does when you hit an enemy with it. Freezes them in place, takes a few pictures, and then it kills them. Well, at least it kills the basic frills. Next on our list is the Frostyrang. Not only can this rang freeze enemies and put out fires, but it can also create ice stepping stones in water. So yes, of course, it does have a practical use. If you aim out in water, you can make a little platform that you have to jump across. This is required for a few collectibles in the game, not a terrible amount. And then, as it said, it can also freeze enemies. Frozen enemies easily die to a single bite when you shatter them. Like so, or I guess just when you walk into them. They were dying before I even got to bite them, so... A really good rank here, definitely worth the buy, and like I said, you'll need it for at least a few collectibles. It costs 2,000 opals in the shop. Of course, the Frostyrang has its fiery counterpart. This is the Flamerang. Heat things up with a rang of fire. Naturally, they can start fires and cut through ice, but they're also great for burning through sticky spider webs. As far as I know, this doesn't do anything special to enemies, but you'll need it at a few points when you need to melt some ice, or as the description said, burn through spider webs. It costs 2,000 in the shop, just like the Frostyrang. And in order to complete the elemental trio, you will of course need the Zappyrang. Supercharged with enough electricity to light up Burramudgee on a Saturday night, this rang will give your enemies a real shock. It costs 400. It costs 4,000 in the shop to buy, and just like the Flamerang, I don't think it does anything really to enemies. But you might find a few generators around the game. They are very few and far between and often not required. I basically made it through the whole game and all the collectibles without needing this rank. But hey, if you ever find one of these, throw the Zappyrang at it and it'll power it up so it starts doing stuff. Next up, we have the Infrarangs. Now the Infrarangs use a special infrared attachment. The Infrarang enables you to see things you couldn't see before. Make sure you scan for hidden stuff when you visit somewhere new. It also reveals Madame Mopoke's secrets in the corner map. So, while this rank isn't required, like some of the others, to do stuff, it is definitely a lot more useful than the Zappyrang. If you look through Ty's view, you can see invisible stuff. And you get a nice little alarm there to tell you that, hey, there's something invisible here on the map that you should look for. And then if you look over there, it kind of highlights stuff that you can collect. If you're ever unsure of where to go after you exit Ty's view, go back into Ty's view, just throw your rang at one of the invisible things, and now you can see it in broad daylight without going into Ty's view. And of course, if you have Madame Mopoke's maps that show you where all the collectibles are, this will show them on your corner map down there whenever you have it equipped, which just makes gathering them a little bit easier. It also, fun fact, functions like the Boomerang did in the first game, basically replaces it and gives you a very far range on your rang throws. All this, and it only costs 4,000 opals in the shop. Definitely a good first buy. For another 4,000 opals, you can buy the Lasharang. It is equipped with Julius's patented super stretchy elasto rope. This rang will let you swing through the air by hooking onto special Lasharang rings, like this one here. You can just kind of swing yourself across any gap that has these rings there. Now, it has a few advantages and disadvantages. It has very short range, but due to that, you can throw it just a bit faster than other rangs, but it will not instantly kill enemies, so be wary that while you're throwing faster, you're gonna have to hit a lot more. Moving up to 5,000 opals in the shop, you get the Smasharang. This super strong rang can break through even the toughest of metals. Very handy to have when you encounter steel crates. So yeah, the main draw with this one is you can start to break all of these steel crates that you see around the game. It can also break through any cracked rocks you see that kind of glow red. In combat, I think it might do double damage. Don't quote me on that, but be aware It is slower and doesn't have nearly as much range as some of the other boomerangs you get. If you're looking for a purely combat-focused rang, then look no further. The final rang that you get in the shop for 6,000 is the Megarang. Now, the Megarang uses Julius's patented super-seeking technology. The Megarang has the ability to auto-target enemies, useful when you run into a bunch of Cass's henchmen. So yeah, it doesn't do anything technical like freeze water or see invisible objects, but hey, the feeling of being able to walk through a whole group of enemies and just throw your rang willy-nilly and they don't stand a chance is pretty good, am I right? If you make your way all the way to Sly's shop out in the map and climb all the way up here, you can buy yourself a multitude of upgraded ranks, some of the best ones you'll find in the game. The first one we'll be going over, though, is the Craftyrang. You can see Ty holding it here. Handcrafted by Sheila's advanced preschool class from the finest repurposed wood remnants. It has a hair trigger and really packs a wallop. This thing only costs 50 opals in the shop, and it doesn't look great. I do believe, however, it's pretty decent. It says it's as strong as the Smasharang, which I already said I think does more damage, and it has an interesting use to it. You'll see that if you fire it from above, it does go straight to the ground, but whenever it hits a surface, it sticks there for a second, and basically works as a little landmine, popping into popsicles and damaging any enemies that walk over it. You can also, of course, just hit enemies with it. It has a short range, but when it hits them, it'll do the same. It'll just pop into popsicle sticks and hurt them. So, not a bad buy for just 50 opals, I think. The first real rang that we have in Sly's shop is gonna be the Multirang. For only 8,000 opals, you can grab this bad boy. It is a souped-up version of your basic boomerang with the one exception. You can throw heaps of them at the same time. So you throw one, not a huge difference, maybe shorter range, but not by much. But you're not meant to just throw one. Doesn't do anything special when it just hits a lot. Now, as I said, the main thing you're going to see with the rangs in Sly's shop is that they are just upgraded versions of the rangs you've already bought. That includes the Freezerang, upgraded version of the Frostyrang. It costs 8,000 opals to buy, but what's colder than cold? A Freezerang, that's what. Extinguish fires, freeze enemies, and create small icebergs in water that you can stand on. Now, it says icebergs in water. There is no noticeable difference when you use it on water. It's still just a small ice platform. And I didn't really notice a difference fighting regular enemies with it. I do know, however, that all of the upgraded ranks, for the most part, give you the ability to fight and actually defeat Uberfrills. It may still take a while, but eventually... Okay, so it turns out that the Freezerang is actually one of the few upgraded ranks that can't kill these guys. Hooray! So, yeah, I don't really see a purpose in buying this upgraded rank. Just keep the regular one, I guess. You know what upgraded rank can kill these guys, though? The Lavarang. Again, eventually... Ah, there we go. This one does kill them, it just takes a while. The Lavarang. Turn up the heat with this supercharged rang. The Lavarang creates a devastating firewall on impact, strong enough to hurt even Cass's uber reptiles. See, it even says it in the description. This one can kill Uberfrills, and they can kill me. Other than that, just like the other rangs that we'll see, this one only really has combat advantages compared to the original. So unless you really want to start fighting fire with fire, then you probably don't need this one. And then, of course, for another 8,000 opals, you can get yourself the third and final upgraded elemental rang, the Thunderang, generating a loud thunderclap. This rang can knock back even the hardiest of enemies. It has a very nice Thunder Spear effect on it as well whenever you use it. Very cool indeed. But I'm not quite sure if this is working on the Uberfrill or not. It doesn't seem to be doing much. Ah, there it goes. So this one can kill them as well. It looks like the Freezerang is the only elemental rang that's upgraded and still can't kill these guys. The X-Rang is, of course, the upgraded Infrarang, and it is the ultimate rang for secret hunters. When equipped, it gives you the ability to see stuff that's normally hidden to the naked eye. It also reveals Madame Mopoke's secrets in the corner map, which sounds very similar to the description of the Infrarang, but let me show you the difference. With the Infrarang, of course, you have to use Ty's view in order to see stuff, and you can throw the rang at it, and it'll stay visible. The X-Rang, however, it just shows you everything without even having to look through Ty's view. You can just carry this around and see all the invisible boxes. You can see them over there in the distance already. There should be some right in the air up there. No issue at all. 11,000 opals. Now, how would you go about upgrading the Lasharang that just lets you swing across gaps? Well, you let it teleport you to crystals that you can see, apparently. The Warperang, using a trans-dimensional warp coil, this rang teleports you through solid walls when contact is made with special purple warp crystals. I don't know who thought about that being an upgrade to a rope swing, but hey, it works, doesn't it? For only 11,000 opals, you too can just teleport through solid walls. As long as there's a weird purple crystal on the other side, of course. Now, how do you upgrade a literal explosion? Well, bigger explosions, of course. The Kaboomerang. This rang is made from the rare Outback element Explodarium, which is just as spectacular as it sounds. Launch one of these rippers and watch the fireworks. That's a great description, but Ty doesn't just fire one of them. He throws both of them. And they just sort of collide with each other and land a massive explosion to break anything that you want to break. Except for that purple crystal. I'll get you someday. Now, if you thought the Megarang was good, well, just imagine the Omegarang. For just 14,000 opals, you can get the pinnacle of combat boomerangs. This rang is equipped with Julius's new and improved super duper seeking technology. Just throw it at a bunch of enemies and watch it attack them in turn. Now, the main difference here is it will auto-target enemies, but it will hit more than one enemy at the same time. You can see there it just kind of bounces between them if it has to. And overall, I think this is just a really good level section to show it off. It'll even hit buttons there and various crates, as you can see. As long as you're using this rang, you don't really have to worry about being killed by enemies. You can just fire this off as much as you want, and it'll take out everything in its path. Let's see how it stands up to Uberfrills. It actually takes them out pretty fast, and again, it'll bounce between them, like so, if it has to. Just one boomerang should eventually take them out. These ones are taking a little longer, so let me just lay into them. But yeah, overall, just a really good boomerang to have to get you through any fight you need. Now, these last two boomerangs are quite expensive, and even if you have everything else in the game, chances are you're going to have to grind some opals for them. The first one is the Deadlyrang, and it costs 30,000 opals. This used to be Sly's very own Boomerang until he let you have it. It's incredibly powerful and more than a match for Cass's Uber reptiles. Now, my question is, if these used to be Sly's Boomerangs, then why didn't he use them against you in the first game? Because they would have definitely killed me. For an example of just how powerful they are, let's drop down here to our favorite Uber Frill targets. And, oh, it's basically a Kaboomerang. Except you can throw them both at once and just blow everything up. That's a little overpowered. Even more expensive than those, though, are the Doomerangs. You can guide the Doomerang by remote control to hit enemies from a distance, great for launching a surprise attack. They sound really cool, and they return from the first game. They're kind of iconic. They cost 75,000 opals, and you can't use them like normal rangs. When you throw one of these, it's like a remote control, and the controls are inverted and kind of hard to adjust. I don't think one of those even took out this Uber Frill here. It's kind of hard to make sure I'm aiming at it. Maybe if I get a more clear view. Maybe just one hit will take out an Uber Frill, which isn't bad. Oh no, it's definitely 2 hits. Just like the Deadlyrang. Really, it's a pretty good rang, but I can't think of any real situation you'd want to use it, except for maybe if you want to kill these Uber Frills from afar. That's about it, though. Still, really cool. That was the last rang that you can acquire in the game, and how to acquire it. So, the guide part of the video is pretty much done here, but for people who are aware, I always like to do little tier lists in some of these videos here, just to close up my thoughts on the game. In the first high Boomerang guide, I did a tier list on all the Boomerangs. So, for just a second, we're going to hop back into that same tier list, and we're going to add all the new ones into it. Alright, so to kick off this tier list, I want to start by saying there are a lot of rangs that return from the previous game, but some of them have been changed, some of them have not been changed, so I'm going to run through that list first and change my edits from there. Also, I have added a new tier, SS, to this list, because, you know, maybe there's something better than the previous only S tier rang that I put up here. Who knows? We'll get there. The only other edit I've made is the lasso rank here. I copied it from the Lasharang, because in the first game you have the lasso rank, but there's no image I could find for it, so I used the Lasharang one sort of deal. So that's just how to tell them apart. Same deal with the Blastorang. It literally looks like the regular Boomerang, so I copied it and just put Blastorang under it. So yeah, without ado, let's get started with the rangs that are returning. Obviously, right away, 2 that return are the Boomerang and the Aquarang. They're not changed at all. They're still basic rangs. We're going to keep them exactly where they are. The Tier 1 Elemental rangs return from the previous game as well. We will start with the Frostyrang. Now, in the first game, my only complaint with this thing was that you couldn't kill enemies with it. Now, obviously, you can, so that's going to boost it up to regular B tier, but also, it does freeze them in place, so even if you aren't killing them right away, you don't gotta worry about them. So just by solving the problem that it doesn't kill them, I think that boosts it up not just 1, but 2 tiers up to A tier. It is now a decently really good rang. The Flamerang, on the other hand, my complaint with that in the first game was that when you used it on boxes to get opals, it wouldn't destroy the boxes right away, and you would have to wait around for them. And they fixed that as well. So now it'll instantly destroy boxes and get you those opals. Now, that being said, there's not really much combat advantage to throw it in A tier. I do still think it is a very mid rang, all in all. Then you got the Zappyrang, which I already have in B tier because it was a very mid rang. It didn't really do much in the first game. I'm gonna be honest, they didn't really change it at all in the second game. It still doesn't do much. It still only affects the generators, which there aren't a lot of, so it's gonna stay right there in B tier. The Infrarang is also returning from the last game, but with an added benefit. It now has the ability that the Zoomerang had in the first game, in that it is a very long-range Rang. That, along with being able to see invisible objects, I think that boosts it up to A tier. Then we got the Megarang. Really good Rang. I'm going to keep it S. It hasn't really changed much. It's still just really good. Next up, we got the Multirang, which, again, hasn't really changed much. You can still just throw a bunch of Rangs at once, which is better than a regular Boomerang, but still not great, so it's going to stay in A tier. Next up, we got the Kaboomerang, and, for this one, I'm going to completely pull it off the list for now. We're going to throw it back down here with the others, and I'll get to why we do that later. The last Rang that returns from the first game is going to be our Doomerang here. And again, it has not really changed much. It's still just a remote control Rang you can only throw one of. You're very open whenever you throw it, and you can get attacked by any enemies. So, other than the fact that it's just kind of fun to play around with, it's not really a great Rang, but I'm going to take that fun and just keep it at B tier. A very mid Rang. Let's get on to the new stuff now, shall we? We're going to start from the beginning with the Blastorang. You guys already know it's literally just a regular old Rang you use while you use the 4B. Sure, it blows up stuff, but it's in a vehicle. It's nice to just blow stuff up. It's still very mid for a vehicle, if that makes sense. So that's going to go B tier, right in between the regular Boomerang and the Aquarang. Next up, we have the Lasharang, the real Lasharang. And my first thoughts on this is, I think it does kill enemies, but it takes a little bit for them to actually die. It's not really a good combat Rang, which makes me want to put it in C tier, but it is kind of fun, honestly, to swing around on a rope. It's a really cool new mechanic they added. And I think that fun, just like the Doomerang, will throw it in B tier as a mid-Rang. Next, we got the Smasharang, which kind of takes the place of the Kaboomerang from the first game. It's a Rang that you throw that blows stuff up. So instantly it's better than B tier, but it's kind of short range and it's slow, so it doesn't do much higher than A. It's not quite on that Megarang level, so there it goes right next to these other decent Rangs, but not great Rangs. Next, we got the Freezerang, the upgraded version of the Frostyrang there. You would think it would be a tier higher, but as we saw in the video, doesn't really do much else different. All the effects are the same, it freezes enemies, it still can't kill Uberfrills, it's just not a great upgrade. I wouldn't even call it an upgrade, honestly, it's exactly the same. A tier. Same as the last one. Moving on, we got the Lavarang, which is the upgraded Fire Rang, and it does mostly the same stuff, but it can actually kill Uberfrills, and it gives you a really cool, nice wave of fire when you hit enemies. I'm unsure if that wave of fire will actually damage multiple enemies, but I think just the fact that it can now kill Uberfrills boosts it up a tier from the Flamerang. It is A tier. The Thunderang, for much the same reasons as the Lavarang, I think should go in A tier. Again, now it can kill Uberfrills. It has this really cool static ball effect now. Not sure if it damages other enemies, but it also sort of paralyzes the one enemy that you hit it with until it dies. So Definitely A tier above the Zappyrang. They made that one better. Thank you. Now that we're out of the elemental rangs, we're going to move to the X rang. Now, the X rang is exactly like the Infrarang, except now you can see invisible stuff without having to look into Ty's view. Which, if you're a seasoned player like me, you don't even need Ty's view in the first place, making this upgrade completely useless, putting it in exactly the same tier as its previous one, A. Now we come to the Warperang, which is the upgraded Lasharang. Lasharang? Lasharang, Lassorang, they're very similar. The upgraded Lasharang. And the upgrade here is that it can attach to the purple crystals. It still can't really fight enemies that well. But, like, also teleporting through the wall to those purple crystals isn't fun. I don't think it can actually swing on ropes like the Lasharang. It is literally the Lasharang with a much less fun mechanic. So that's going in C tier, oddly enough below the one it's supposed to be an upgrade from. Next up, we got the Omegarang. What do I got to say about this bad boy? Honestly, it's the Megarang, which is already S tier, but it's better. Why do you think we added an SS tier? Easy. SS tier, best rang you could possibly have. We'll go ahead and do the Kaboomerang now, which is the better Smasharang here. It has a much larger explosion. It does leave you sort of open when you throw both your rangs at once, but with that explosion radius, I don't think it really is a problem. It's a much funner rang to use than the Smasharang, and I think that puts it at S tier with the Megarang here. And finally, we come to the Deadlyrang. Now, I had to think about this. The Deadlyrang is a really good rang. It is obviously an upgrade from the Kaboomerang, because you can throw two massive explosions at the same time. It can kill Uberfrills in 2 hits, much like the Doomerang, without leaving you open, without having to deal with the annoying remote control bit. It is easily an S tier, but I think the whole reason I restructured this and I took Kaboomerang off was because of this right here. I think this should actually go in double S tier with the Omegarang. I think with either of these, I much prefer the Omegarang, but with either of them, you can get through any combat challenge in the game without a single sweat. So there we go. That is my Tie 2 Boomerang tier list. If you have anything you would think is different, let me know in the comments. If you think something should be higher or lower, let me know. I want to know your thoughts. If you think I'm right, cool. I'm glad I'm right. I should be. Just kidding. But yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you for watching. And that's the last Tie 2 guide I have. Next time we play a Tie game for a guide, we're going to start Tie 3, Night of the Kinks. So I'll see you guys then. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye. Not me for getting 2 rangs. This is actually a day later. I recorded the Tie video and the tier list last night, and this is the next day, and I realize while editing the video, I forgot to rank these 2 ranks here. So let's go ahead and do that, but first, I've thought it over. And I've watched the video. Smasharang, it doesn't actually blow up. I don't know where I got that misconception. We're putting it down in B tier. Kaboomerang, I don't feel good putting it with the Megarang. So that's going down to A tier. Just small edit there. Small. Now let's get to this stuff. We'll start with the Camerang. Combat-wise, I feel like it is a little bit better than the base B rank Boomerangs. And it does have the fun function of taking pictures. It's not nearly as useful as any of the S tier or SS tier ones, but I feel like it deserves a spot on A. It does freeze enemies, but Granted, it could also just kill them right away. It just delays the kill. But it's still fun nonetheless to take pictures. Then we have the Craftyrang. I'm going to be honest, I haven't really messed around with this one enough to give it a full rating. It definitely seems better than B rank, but not S tier. I like the concept of putting down mines. And like I said, it did say somewhere on the wiki or in the description somewhere, I remember reading it, it is as strong as the Kaboomerang. So I think it's definitely an A tier rang. That's about it, though. I just wanted to record this now and actually have all the ranks here. That's the finalized version for Tai 2. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.